more women, more men, more alcohol, more drugs, etc. So the idea here, see, is that in this frantic search for happiness, Satan always follows the same rule, right? What he does is he convinces someone, oh, you're not happy until you have a little bit of this, right? And so they do a little bit of this, whatever that is. And in this case, with these individuals who function, whose old sin nature is to function improperly with regard to sex when they're out of fellowship, okay, the idea is, oh, all you've got to do is have a little bit of this, improper sexual relationship, right? First we'll get you a little bit drunk, and then we'll get her a little bit drunk, and then we'll let you guys hook up. And the idea is that, well, then the individual, wakes up the next morning and goes, oh my gosh, what did I do, right? Is feeling guilty, and then it's like, well, wait a minute, maybe I'm not happy because I only had one woman. Maybe I need two women, or maybe I need three, or four, or five, or whatever, right? And so Satan just keeps adding more and more. And so the idea is these excesses. And so Peter understands this, and Peter's talking about these excesses, right? I was relating to some people yesterday about an individual that I know whose daughter dodged a bullet because she ended up getting engaged to an individual who, as it turned out, was not only married, okay, but had two or three other fiancés that he was about ready to marry as well, right? Who knows how many. She found out about another one. It might have been two, might have been three, right? And that's the kind of excesses, right? All you need is a little bit more, right? Is obviously an individual who is arrogant, who has, no idea what happiness really is, and is in a frantic search for happiness, right? But anyway, that's what we have here, okay? Continue the point. Peter uses this word in the singular. In other words, it's excess, not excesses, okay? It's the same excess. So Peter uses this word in the singular to emphasize that the excess stems from the same root. In other words, this frantic search for happiness stems from the same root and is only manifest in multiple ways. Continuing the point, I probably could have broke these up into A, B, C, but I didn't. Continuing the point, we're getting a little bit of exegesis, obviously, in this point. Continue the point. It says, and then finally he uses the noun asotia. That's A-S long O-T-I-A. It's asotia. Sorry about that. The accent is on the I. So it's asotia. This word means dissipation, recklessness, or lack of control, and is extended to mean debauchery. So here's where we beat a dead horse, but I'm going to give you a sentence. The complete meaning of this phrase, then, so the complete meaning of this phrase is that this debauchery is constantly being chased and when happiness is not attained, Then more is added until you have excess. These individuals are not happy. And they don't want anyone else to be happy either, comma. Because it would show the farce that they are living. So when you have this crowd, when you have this mob mentality, and they're all malfunctioning together, they're trying to convince each other that they're happy. And the mob mentality is the individual stops and says, if he's honest with himself or herself, and says, I'm not really happy, but they all look like they're happy, so I should be happy doing this, so I'm going to pretend that I'm happy, right? And then they get sucked into pretending that they're happy, but they're not. So they continue to look for more and more happiness, or they continue to look for happiness, so they go to more and more excess. Right? And so you have this crowd that's feeding on itself. Nobody is happy, but they're all convincing each other that they're happy, and so they're trying to be happy, and it just is this negative spiral, right, that goes down to get worse and worse. And as we saw, in this particular category, could lead to human sacrifice. But the concept is that these individuals are arrogant. They're not going to admit that the choices that they've made are wrong, and that they're not happy, because they look around and they see these other people who are pretending to be happy, but they don't realize they're pretending, and so they see them and say, well, they're happy, right? So it must be okay choices. I just must have done something wrong. But they're not going to admit it. And so rather than admitting it and stopping it and going into a different direction, they decide that they don't want anybody else to be happy, right? And the minute someone in their crowd wakes up, comes to the realization that this is the wrong path, this will never lead to happiness, I'm not happy, I never will be happy, it just gets worse and worse, I'm getting out of this path, I'm going to hop over to the proper path, I'm going to rebound and see what I can do as far as reconstructing the rest of my life in the will of God and function properly. The minute someone like that does that and shows this arrogant individual who's been fighting his own internal battle, realizing that, trying to convince himself that he didn't make the wrong decision, right? Once he sees someone do that, it's human nature to get angry at that person. To say, how can they do that? How can they leave us? I'm such a magnificent person. I've been working so hard to be happy, and they're just leaving. No, they got to come back and work as hard as I am, right? And so what happens is the natural result is, as Peter says here, is maligning or attacking. Right? There's countless books and plays and movie stories and movie lines and TV shows about people who are like that, who they go after someone who has left their group. Right? In fact, we were watching a comedy the other night, and one of the kids in the comedy, one of the storylines in this comedy is that this kid had belonged to the Scientologists, and he leaves the Scientologist, right? He realizes that they're wrong, right? So he leaves the Scientologist, and bingo, two Scientologists show up at the door. He goes to live with his grandfather. Two Scientologists show up at the door of the grandfather. Yeah, we're looking for Mark, or whatever, right? Once they find out, once you leave a group that's not malfunctioning, they don't want to let you go. They want to humiliate you or whatever and continue on. That is the old sin nature associated with what? Human nature, what we call human nature. See, people want to think human nature is good. Human nature is evil, right? Well, human nature is neutral. Humans are very, very weak creatures. In and of themselves, they are neither good nor evil, right? They have the propensity for evil associated with having the old sin nature, but they need the demonic, the satanic influence of the cosmos, of the world itself, to be evil, right? And then we also, of course, to be good, need the will of God. We need to function properly in the will of God. So anyway, these individuals are malfunctioning, and they're arrogant. They don't want to admit that what they're doing is wrong, and when somebody says that they're wrong, then there's going to be an all-out unleashed attack. Okay. So point 7. Now we're ready for point 7. I gave you the last few words on the last sentence. She said the farce that they're living, right? Okay. Point 7. The result you can always expect When you call these people out by leaving them, is then given, comma, quote, therefore they are constantly maligning you, period, end quote. See, all you have to do to see this kind of activity is go to high school. Yeah. There's all kinds of cliques, all kinds of gangs, all kinds of, they won't call them gangs, but all kinds of groupings in high school. And if you get in with a group and then you decide, this group isn't for me, and you decide to leave to go for another group, okay, to go to be on your own even, right, which is the better choice, of course, and don't want to go from one group to another malfunctioning group, but to actually go on your own, then what happens is that group all of a sudden starts maligning you. And you start hearing all these rumors about how horrible of a person you were. You never really belonged to their group anyway. They can't believe that they actually let you into their group. They never should have done that, and they're going to make sure that nobody like you ever has, has anything to do with them ever again, and blah, 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 blah. And if you've ever been in high school, I'm sure you've seen it. You may not have been involved in it, but you've seen it. You've probably had friends who were, or whatever. It's just, it's just interesting to watch the microcosm of high school because it is, where all of this kind of junk can be very visible, right? As you become an adult, it starts to get hidden more and more, right? And then as you get into the workplace, those same groups belong in every company. I mean, or not belong, but I mean they are in every company, and every company has its own little group, right? And that kind of stuff goes on, but it's more of a professional way that they handle it, right? So anyway, it's there. Point 7. So the result you can always expect when you call these people out by leaving them is then given, comma, quote, therefore they are constantly maligning you, period, end quote. Subpoint A. Here's the principle, colon. When you cross someone, they will malign you. Period. People don't like to be crossed. And they will malign you as a form of self-preservation. As a result of the old sin nature. See, we already know these individuals are operating on emotion. They're not functioning properly. If they're not functioning properly, they can't be using anything that they've got in their soul, and so they're operating on emotion. They're an emotional revolt of the soul, right? And so there's no logic. If they had any logic, they would realize that when you left them, maligning you would do no good. Maligning you does nothing to you, okay? It just keeps their anger stirred up. See, the person who's doing the maligning, as we saw in James, are the ones that show that they are malfunctioning. Remember, James said that when you have an individual who is ridiculing you, they are, or maligning you, accusing you, they're the ones who are being accused. They're the ones who are showing themselves to be the foolish ones. And these people don't realize that, right? Because they have no logic. They're operating totally on emotional revolt of the soul, and therefore their old sin nature says, hey, someone has, wounded, quote, you, which of course hasn't happened, you just left, but they've wounded you, and therefore you need to wound them back equivalently, right? So that's what they're going to do, okay? So as a form of self-preservation as a result of the old sin nature. Subpoint B. This is in common with all humans. Therefore, when the person is operating on his old sin nature, using human good and evil, he will react this way. When a person is out of fellowship, there are generally three ways that they handle a, quote, personal affront, end quote, colon. This is only one. Peter picked the malign, okay, but there's generally three different ways. You guys could probably, without even saying it, I could say, you guys write down what your three ways are. I'll come around and check, and you probably all have it right, okay, but I'll give it to you. Colon, blow up, comma, slow burn, comma, or malign, period. So that's what the police have to handle a lot of times in domestic violence cases, right, is the blow up part. When the husband or the wife says, you're wrong, okay, and the other one is so arrogant that they can't take it that they're wrong, okay, then they blow up. Right, and then you got a situation in hand, and the poor cop's got to come in and try and keep them from killing each other, right? You know, or you have the slow burn, and you have the individuals that quit talking, okay, and they're just seething. You can just see it. Their whole body, their whole mannerism turns into a seething, and it becomes this constant attack. Right, that is just a seething attack. Right, that's probably what happens mostly in the quote-unquote professional environment. You tell a boss that he's wrong, or you tell someone that they're wrong, and they go into this slow burn, right? And next time you have a performance review, or the next time you come up with an idea, you know, they're going to attack you, right? Whether it's justified or not, right? That's the immature boss, okay, or the immature employee. When you tell an employee, right, then they go into this slow burn. Right, and then that's when you've got to be careful, because you start having quality issues if you're in the manufacturing world, or you start having things because they just start doing this little slow attack, right? And then of course you have the maligning. Continue the point. Here, these people. Whoops! I must have accidentally touched my trackpad. Here, these people have no capacity for life. And when you show them that, they attack and malign you. So you have to be careful, because what you're doing is you're showing them that what they're trying to fill their life with is nothing that is worth filling your life with, and they are not really living. They think that they are living, right? They're right on the edge, boy. They're the the hip people. They're the ones that are living life to the fullest. And when you show them, no, you're not. You're just filling a facade. You're not filling your life. You're not living your life to the fullest. You're just filling it with events that satiate you, but momentarily, but have nothing to do with actual capacity for life and having a good life, right? You're just one step away from being an empty husk of a person. They can't handle that. Okay. Subpoint C. This will be the last subpoint in this point. Subpoint C. This maligning is a perfect illustration of suffering circumstances. See, Peter gave us the suffering circumstances first and talked about suffering circumstances because he was going to be working into this. See? And this maligning is a version of suffering circumstances, right? It's undeserved suffering, but these people are maligning you. They're trying to pull any acquaintances that you might be gathering who are properly functioning away from you by trying to make you out to be the bad guy, right? And these are suffering circumstances. So this is a perfect illustration of suffering circumstances. Continue the point. Accept it. Thank God for it. And operate in fellowship. I mean, when these people start maligning you, and they're doing the wrong thing, then you can be pretty well assured that what you're doing is the right thing. Okay? And in fact, there's kind of a point here that says if you want to find the right people to run with, you want to find the right crowd, quote unquote, to go with, then listen to the maligning, see who they run down, and go to those people. The old idea that whoever they don't like are the people that you should like, right? But the concept is that this can be potentially suffering circumstances, but you don't let it be suffering for you. It just reinforces, right? There's many times when it's easy to get down. It's easy to allow yourself to get out of fellowship and feel sorry for yourself if you've made a right decision and then all of a sudden there's nobody around. Okay? Well, if you've made the right decision, if what you're doing is truly doctrinally sound, and you're functioning properly and there's no one around, so what? That was the passage in Jeremiah. So what? Even if you're the only person on the face of the earth, and believe me, you won't be. That was the other part that God was telling this individual, because they're feeling sorry for themselves. I'm the only one here. It's like, no. Okay, that was a different passage. That wasn't one in Jeremiah. But anyway, the idea is if you won't be the only one. Okay, but even if it feels like you are, so what? As long as you're functioning properly and you're in God's plan for your life, you have the confidence to know and the courage toward mankind to know that it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks about you. It doesn't matter what anybody else wants to do for you. You've always got God has got your back, okay? And all the angels that are observing are getting a fantastic lesson. And just like Job, you just continue to function. And you don't worry about what's out here. It doesn't matter what's out here. What's out here, okay, is the cosmic system. It's what's in here, what's in your soul. How are you functioning with regard to the information in your soul? And if you've made the proper decision, in this case we have Peter's relaying individuals who got out of this, okay, then it doesn't matter. And in fact, that's what we're going to see in verse 5 here if I quit talking. And give you point 8, and then we can go into verse 5. Verse 5 is the fact that Peter's going to tell you that by functioning properly, you are going to be giving an account. You have to give an account, and you're going to be giving the proper account when you function properly. And it doesn't matter what's happening on the outside. It matters that you do what you're supposed to do in God's plan for your life. Okay? So if you're left without anybody, so what? You're left without anybody. You've got God. You've got all this opportunity to review doctrine, to function properly without any distractions. If there's nobody around, there's nobody around. That's pretty good. Once in a while, it'd be nice to have nobody around. But the idea is that you have the opportunity. Point 8. Peter doesn't stop here. With the idea that you have to get used to being maligned. So Peter doesn't stop here with the idea that you have to get used to being maligned, period. I should have gone down in my voice, I know, but I didn't. Remember that throughout this epistle, he has been using doctrine to get these people back into orientation with God and to trust God and his plan. Remember, the whole concept of this epistle is to get them to trust God, to make sure that they're functioning properly doctrinally, and that they need to trust God because there's potential bad times coming. Nero may be coming to grab them up, and they need to be strong. They need to be sound. They need to not be functioning and dipping their toes and junk like this. Okay, they need to make sure that they are operating entirely in God's will. Okay, continue the point. He is going to give another attempt to do that. In the following verses. By giving us the idea that all mankind at one point or another will be evaluated or judged by the higher authority of the Lord Jesus Christ. As we will see later in this chapter, by handling this undeserved suffering, as well as other issues which Peter will present, you're actually guaranteeing blessing in both time and eternity. From
will present you.
What Peter will present. You're guaranteeing blessing in time and eternity.
You just start with Peter will.
No, I can't because I modified what I was saying because what I have written is not what I said. So, so can somebody else read it back, please?
Sure, it says, as will other issues which Peter will present, comma, you are actually guaranteeing blessing in both time and eternity.
Yeah, you caught me on one of the times where I was doing a little bit of editing because I was starting to beat a dead horse, so I wanted to make sure that I got the right point out. Okay, so I gave you the point. The idea of what we're going to see in the coming verses, Peter goes into spiritual gifts, he's going to go into some other things, is the fact that here are these individuals that were malfunctioning. They pulled out of this malfunction, and not only did they just pull out, but the idea is whenever you pull out and you start producing divine good, you are guaranteeing blessing in time and eternity. Okay, divine good, functioning properly, produces divine good, and divine good produces positive blessing. Okay, so not only did they quit getting the discipline associated with malfunctioning and the loss of blessing associated not only with malfunctioning but that discipline, but they've opened themselves up to the opportunity to have more and greater blessing by functioning properly with regard to this undeserved suffering. So they wouldn't have had this maligning if they hadn't malfunctioned to begin with. And so this is the true concept of cursing turned to blessing. They were being cursed for malfunctioning. They got back into functioning properly. Now they've got this maligning going on. And if they treat that function properly and function in the will of God, they're going to have above and beyond blessing in time and eternity. Okay, so Peter's going in the rest of verse 4, chapter 4, is going to give us examples of things that lead to blessing. So he's not only encouraging these individuals to function properly, so that they don't, so that they can handle the potential coming catastrophe that might be coming from Nero, but he's also setting them up so that they can understand how to function properly in time for maximum blessing in time. Okay, and that leaves us ready for verse 5, which is actually where we're going to pick it up at after the break. So. I did say that, didn't I? I said we're going to do it after communion. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. I forgot to bring copies of the prayer, but thank you for the reminder. It's been an interesting week, as you can imagine. So, yeah, but first we're going to do. So we'll do True Spiritual Giving. We'll have a 15-minute break. We'll come back and we'll do a prayer meeting. Okay. So. Okay, so we're going to do True Spiritual Giving. Of course, the timetable and the concept is given to us in 1 Corinthians 16:2. On the first day of every week, let each one of you, according to his own judgment, be putting aside and saving according to how he might be prospering. Of course, the idea is always associated with prosperity. Then we have each one should give just as he himself has decided what is the right amount in his heart, slant right lobe, not out from sorrow, pain, distress, reluctance, and we know that's associated with personal loss, nor out from compulsion, and that's external pressure, people trying to get you to give. For you see, the God keeps on loving a cheerful, satisfied giver, and we understand that that's emphasized because that tells us that you need to be in the divine dynasphere in order to function properly and give properly. Then we have Proverbs 3:9 and 10, which says, honor the Lord from your prosperity and from the first of all your income. And remember, it's honoring, and the idea is you're supposed to have a budget, you're supposed to understand so that you can do the first of your income. And if you do, your storehouses shall be filled with superabundance, and your vat shall overflow with new wine. By demonstrating that you can handle the capacity that you have now, you're also demonstrating that you're open for more and greater capacity. And we know from Proverbs 10:6 that he will fulfill, or 10:3, he will fulfill that prosperity. Then we have the true spiritual giving. We have the doctrine as the true wealth plus a warning. For you see, if the eagerness, willingness, readiness, and that's positive volition, is present, this is perfectly acceptable to the degree he might be having. It is not perfectly acceptable to the degree he is not having. The concept being that if you try to give via an IOU, then you are destroying the whole concept of the memorial of true spiritual giving. Okay, if you don't have anything, you can go to God in prayer and ask for the opportunity to be able to give in the temporal area. And of course, if you pray properly, your prayers will be answered. Doesn't mean that you'll have a positive answer. You may have a negative answer, but positive or negative, you'll have fantastic information directly from God, knowing as to whether you're supposed to be giving or not. And then finally, we have God's ability to supply the prosperity based on what I just said, which says, now the God keeps on being manifestly able to richly provide all grace to you, in order that while always having complete self-sufficiency in everything, you all might be providing richly to every divine good work. Okay, we're going to go ahead now and take our normal few moments of silence, which is designed to give you the opportunity to go to God in prayer and exhale back to him a portion of what you received from him in the doctrinal area. And then we're also going to pass the container around so that if you've been prospered in the temporal area and you've decided to give, you have the opportunity to do so. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to come together as a congregation and to be able to come to you and exhale back to you a portion of what we received from you, to be able to exhale back, to be able to function properly with regard to true spiritual giving, to be able to understand the concept of true spiritual giving and the basis for true spiritual giving. And for that, we are truly grateful. And we pray in Christ's name. Amen. Okay, we're going to go ahead and close with a song. We're singing from the folders.